Hello everybody, and today we are starting a new series called The Art of the Image, and this is the image we're going to be looking at. In The Art of the Image, we're going to take a look at where the picture was taken, why it was taken, the planning that went into it, the weather conditions, the composition on site, plus stay tuned to the end to find out how I did the post-production on that image to turn it from this to this. Let's get into it. So with most shoots, there's some sort of planning and preconception. This particular shoot, there was actually very little planning went into it. And the reason for that is that it was more a cathartic exercise rather than a pre-planned photographic shoot. It was taken on the 22nd of February 2022, and as many of you may realise, that's 2 days before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And at the time, my wife was in Ukraine and I was in the UK. Obviously, it was an incredibly stressful time, constantly monitoring the news to see what's happening, whether I'm going to have to try to go and meet my wife and get her out of Ukraine, and all those sorts of issues. It was very, very stressful. And this particular morning, I just thought to myself, I'm going extraordinarily early down to the coast just to get away from the news and everything. So I packed my camera gear and I went down to this place, which is called Cuckmere Haven. It's in East Sussex, east of Brighton, along the coast. It's quite a remote little area. There's a big car park and then a sort of a 15-20 minute walk down to the beach. But of course you've got these incredible cliffs in the background called the Seven Sisters. I'd been there before with Tanya in 2018 where I'd flown the drone and got some nice footage, but it was in the day on a nice pleasant day, nothing spectacular to the images. This particular day I got down there and I knew it was going to be quite stormy. What I didn't realise is it was also going to be quite grey and dull, and I ended up sitting in the car park for the best part of 6 hours waiting for the light to get right. I constantly monitored the weather apps to see how the light was looking, and it did seem to show that around 3 o'clock there would be some breaks in the cloud and the storm would sort of start to clear. So I just sat there and I waited and I waited and I waited. And at around 3 o'clock the light did clear, the cloud started to break, the wind was still very high, and I took a wander down to the coast. On the way down I took this particular shot, or a series of these shots. You might have seen these from Twitter. These are the Seven Sisters, 6 of them at least, as somebody pointed out in one of the Facebook groups, the 7th being round the corner to the right here. So I took a few shots here. This was just handheld using a telephoto lens, which was a 55 to 200 millimeter at the time, just to capture the sort of dramatic look that the storm was giving us. So I walked all the way down to the beach and I set up my camera on a tripod and I just started shooting. It was cold, it was windy, it wasn't the most pleasant conditions to shoot in, but I found one particular location that I liked that had a lot of interest in the foreground. And if you can see from this shot, which some of you may have seen before as well, it's got a nice little piece of wood, probably the remains of a groin there, and the sea whips around towards the white cliffs there, and you've got this drama and dramatic sea and the cliff tops and the whiteness. It all looks a lovely sort of dramatic image. This particular composition, again, as I say, I've got this piece of wood down here on the right to hold your eye into the image. I'm using a very fast shutter speed. As you can see from the sea has been frozen in this particular image, and I'm using that curve of the waves to bring the eye all the way round into the huge cliff here. This area to the right here is left sort of fairly clear. I've darkened it up in post-production to give it a sense of drama. So I took several shots like that. I took some using a slower shutter speed as well. This is an example, slightly slower shutter speed here. There's this one here, which is using a shutter speed of 1/4 of a second. So the whole of the area in the foreground here has become really blurred. And I really like that because it adds a sense of dynamism to the image. And it really feels like a dramatic, powerful image. But the image we're actually going to talk about today is this one. This is the main image that we're concentrating on today. When I posted this on the Beautiful Britain group on Facebook, it got something like 4,000 likes, which I was quite surprised about. It's actually not my favourite picture, but if you look into it a little bit deeper, there is quite a lot going on in it, and I'll explain a little bit about my thought processes. First of all, I wanted to capture the majesty and scale of these cliffs. This one closest to us is probably the tallest of the Seven Sisters, and it's incredibly dramatic, and the contrast of the white chalk against the relatively dark sky really gave a good looking image. I wanted to hold the image in at the bottom by using this groin here. You can see at the bottom here I've got this wooden groin that holds your eye into the image and pulls your eye into the cliffs. As luck would have it, and it was luck, there were people on the beach here, and I could see them, and I thought they're going to make a great device for giving us that sense of scale, and as you can see they do. If I zoom out, you can see just how tall those cliffs are relative to these people on the beach here, and you can see they're also sort of hunkered down, battling the storm and the wind, so it all adds to the sense of drama. The seagull at the top here is entirely coincidental. As I took a series of shots, this one just happened to be in the shot that worked really well. But I also wanted to make sure that I included some of the other Seven Sisters in the shot and some of the sky to show that drama and the sort of mistiness in the distance here, all of which came together quite well, I think. I took a number of shots like this, some with a little bit more of the groin in the foreground. As you can see, this one's not actually processed. This is also using a slower shutter speed, and you can see that whilst the water's blurry, I don't think it has the same sort of drama and storm-like feel to it as this water does in the one with the higher shutter speed. This was actually shot at 1,000th of a second at f11. There was quite a lot of light down there despite the storm. It was all shot from tripod, but there was obviously plenty of light to keep a nice high shutter speed and freeze all this action in the water here. So that's that particular shot. I carried on for about an hour shooting a number of different shots, getting a little bit lower down to the beach. I don't think this works particularly well. And also shooting in the opposite direction into the sun, trying to get the drama of the waves smashing up against the Coast Guard cottages here. But I don't think these particularly worked well as well. The light was a little bit too harsh in that direction. I also took this one, but there's nothing really going on other than these two people here walking along. That didn't particularly work very well. So I was down there for about an hour, and it was a tough hour. It was very cold, it was very windy. I hadn't eaten anything at all that day. I'd had a cup of coffee on the road on the way down, foolishly not taking anything with me, and the walk back up was an absolute nightmare. It took me the best part of an hour to walk the 15-minute walk up, just because I was so exhausted, so tired, and just had no energy. Fortunately, there were some benches on the way up, and I would just sort of sit down and try and recover my energy. So that's a top tip. If you're going to spend a long time in a car and then go down to a very cold beach or landscape location, take food with you. Take something to boost your energy up. I got back to the car. I was so exhausted. I really didn't feel like driving back up to London that evening. So I booked into a hotel in Eastbourne, which is just on the other side of the Seven Sisters, and stayed there the night, and then drove up to London the next morning. And of course, the day after that, there was the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and everything changed, and photography really took a back burner until we got settled in the UK, which was around about mid-April. So if you're enjoying this video, it would be great if you could drop me a like and a subscription. It really helps my channel out, getting the engagement up, and it also inspires me to actually shoot a lot more videos and bring more videos to you. So we'll have a quick look at how I post-processed that image as well. So if we go back to it, this is the original image. So if I compare it to the one that I've processed, there's not a huge amount of post-production gone on to it. But what I've done is I've tried to make the sky a bit more dramatic, the whiteness of the cliffs a bit more white, and just pump up the drama a little bit. So if I go to this one and I take it into the develop module like this, we'll just have a very quick run through and I'll show you what I did. The first thing I wanted to do was to boost the contrast. That's simply done by pulling the blacks down here in Lightroom and pulling the whites up. And you can see it instantly adds that contrast, but overall it makes the image too bright. So we bring the brightness down a little bit and we also bring the highlights down a little bit. Then we add a little bit of dehaze. This is very much like cracking a walnut with a sledgehammer. If you push it too far, you see you get way over processed images, but you can use it a little bit just to pull in some details. Then I selected the sky using the sky selection mask tool, and as you can see it does a pretty good job. It's quite hazy down here, so it doesn't pick out absolutely everything, so I don't do too much to the sky. I just reduce the exposure a little bit. I add a little bit of blueness using the color temperature tool like this, and just bring the exposure down a little bit more like that. Then I create another mask using the linear gradient mask here, and I drag that up from the bottom like this, and I bring it up towards the actual sea. Now the idea here is I'm just going to bring the exposure up on the sea to make it more visible. I'm going to bring it a little bit bluer, not too much. We don't want too much blue in the whites there. And we just play around with the white and blacks to get a little bit of extra contrast in that sea, drama in the sea. And we also can add a little bit of clarity to that sea, which makes it look a little bit sharper, a little bit more dramatic. And we just bring that up a little touch like that. And you can see we've got this really dramatic sea. And the only other thing I really did is I punched out the cliffs a little bit using a radial gradient. So I just selected a general area around the cliffs and spread the radial all over the white cliffs like that. And I took the exposure down very slightly, just a touch, and I took the highlights down a little bit as well. Just like that. I added a little bit of blue into those cliffs to make them look a little bit whiter, just like that, and a touch of clarity just to make those cliffs stand out like that. And that's pretty much it. That's the final image as we processed it, and it looks really dramatic. It's got a really nice sort of stormy feel. It's got those iconic cliffs, and it really punches out and makes for a really nice image. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please drop me a like and a subscription. That would be most appreciated. It inspires me to do more videos on YouTube. And if you have any suggestions onto which images you would like me to do art of the image videos about, let me know in the comments below and I will see if I can do that for you. I've got a lot of images. I'm sure some of you are quite familiar with those images, and if you want me to do videos, let me know in the comments below. So that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next one.